Well, hello, friends, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Cassidy Carson, and this is the life of a writer. So, yesterday I talked about finishing the work in progress that I need to get back to today. I'm going to start smoothing things out before I send that off to my betas. But in the meantime, JT and I did an interview with an author, and he was discussing how he worked on a typewriter. And that reminded me that I still have my old workhorse here. I'd already been thinking about this because I noticed it sitting in the back of one of my closets, and it is showing its age. It's missing a couple of keys, as you can see, and the ink cartridge here is dry. So I'll need to see if I can find replacements. At least for the ink cartridge, I can work without these keys, but it would be helpful to have them because it's a little hard to push on these metal posts that hold the keys in place when, you know, it's much easier to put your fingers on the keys themselves. Now, I don't need the keys to know which letters they are because I am a touch typist. I learned typing in high school, took typing classes. I also took business classes. And in those days, we used the old IBM Selectric typewriters that had I believe it had a built-in correction cartridge on it. So this one does not have correction tape. In order to fix my mistakes, I would need to either use an eraser pencil. So there are eraser pencils that have an eraser on one end and a little brush on the other so that you can clear the eraser shavings so that they don't gum up the typewriter keys. So I think I have one of those around the house somewhere. I'll need to get either that or maybe even white out the it's a tricky tricky situation when you want to go back and fix things. So I may just type carefully, cross things out. I will most likely be retyping what I write on here onto my computer, but I thought it would be nice for the project that I'd like to do that I will discuss in more detail later this year, but to sit down and do the occasional old school typing on my, um, not my computer, my typewriter. So this Smith Corona is a portable. It is electric, so it is plugged in over here. The motor does work, so you can hear it, even though it does sound a little rough. I think over time it will probably, hopefully, smooth out. I may need to do something because it sounds like there's a bit of a hitch in the motor. Also, the carriage return works. I love the ding when you reach the end. So the carriage return still works. Obviously, I can load the paper on the roller. It does have the cross pieces right here. They pop up that hold the paper up, and that's more important as I'm working my way up the page because that way it doesn't roll back into itself. It stays upright instead of going back down into the roller there. So this looks like it will work, like I said, as long as I get a new cartridge for it, and I may replace these keys. And I will talk more about the project that I have planned for this as I get there. But for today, I need to get back to working on my work in progress for Restless Spirits Book 2. And then once that goes off to betas, I will start revising Restless Spirits Book 3. When I get back my beta read, I will make whatever changes are necessary and send Book 2 off to our editors and then go back to working on Book 3. I'm working on these two books in tandem, and I hope to release one in April, one in June. And in any little gaps between working on those projects, I may come up here. I've brought a stack of paper with me, and I may play around with this typewriter a little bit. It's fun because, as you can see, I'm not in one of my normal locations. You have seen my upstairs office, and I often sit down on the main floor with JT. We have desks pushed up against each other So they're almost like partner desks that we have our computers back to back and we can kind of chat with each other if we want to. More often than not, when we're actually writing, I will be upstairs, he will be downstairs. He might leave the house to do some writing, and then I will stay at the computer downstairs. But this room is actually our guest room. When we first moved into the house, one of our kids was still living with us, and this was their room. But I've taken it over since they moved out, and it is not only my office space. You can see there is a monitor up here. Actually, we have JT's, I think it's a gaming computer up here that he has not touched for a long time. So we may need to see if this is still working. And then behind the typewriter is my brother's sewing machine. So I have a variety of things I can do with this room. It's multi-purpose. You can see over my shoulder here, I have some crafting supplies. We do have a full-size bed in here. So there is a lot going on in this room. But I think for this, at least the next few months, this may be my little writing garret with my old school electric typewriter. Now, the story of this typewriter is interesting. It does date back to the 1980s, and my husband bought it for me when we were pretty newly married. We had our oldest child, and I was a stay-at-home mom, and I was hoping to earn a little extra income to augment what my husband was making, because he was in the military, in the U.S. Air Force, and they didn't get paid a lot. He was still an airman. He may have been an airman first class at the time, I think. And we did get, they helped cover our rent until we moved into base housing, and obviously there was a salary. He would get a uniform allowance and things like that, but we weren't wealthy by any means, and we had a small child. So at the time, we were also getting some assistance. We were on the Women, Infants, and Children, or WIC program. But I was hoping that maybe some of my writing might help to help us to buy a few things that we needed. We had our child in a portable crib in the corner of our room, partially because we didn't have a lot of space for a full-size crib, and we couldn't afford it. And obviously, we needed to buy diapers, which were pricey even then. I tried using cloth diapers, but disposables were really much easier, because with cloth diapers, you had still a lot of cost associated with laundry. And when we lived off base, I had to go down a couple flights of stairs to do the laundry. So there was not only the cost, there was the wear and tear. JT had to be home to watch our child, because I wasn't going to carry the laundry and the child up and down the stairs while I was doing it. So we went with disposable diapers versus the more difficult process of using cloth diapers. And we did try cloth diapers again with our younger, at least our middle child, but it was much more convenient to use disposables. So we needed the income to help pay for things like that. And I was hoping that this would be a way for me to earn some money, because the other issue was childcare, the cost of childcare. Could I earn enough working probably back at Wendy's, where I had been working when I got pregnant? If I'd gone back there, I probably would not have earned enough hourly salary to cover daycare, diapers, and things like that. So it seemed more reasonable for me to stay at home and take care of the child and try to do some writing when possible. Now, our oldest was a very good baby. She was very quiet, and quiet to the point where sometimes she would not let me know when she was wet or uncomfortable, so that I had to be very careful about checking to make sure she had a dry diaper and that, everything was fine, because she didn't complain. We've always joked that she was an old soul, and she has said that she's been aging backward ever since, but I don't know if I believe that, because she teaches middle school, 7th grade social studies. So I don't think that's less responsibility than she felt as a child. I think that's a lot more. But, while she was quietly playing, I would sit down with this typewriter, and we bought a small desk, and I would write I tried writing romances. I wrote some articles. I did get a few published. Didn't make a ton of money, though. Around 1990, I had one published in a military magazine. It was a nonfiction about thrift shopping, because that was something I did quite a bit with my kids. Unfortunately, they went to school wearing some hideous clothes because instead of buying the most recent fashions, we bought something that someone had donated to the local thrift shop. And I remember the article was called Thrift Shop Savvy, and I think I was paid $50 for it, which was huge. But that was one of my few paid acceptances. Pretty much everything else I had published was just I would get a copy of something in, or a handful of copies of something, as payment for whatever I had written. So I never made money as a writer at that point in time. And this typewriter did get quite a workout. I would spend hours a day working on my stories, working on articles, working on romance novels, working on television scripts, movie scripts, you name it. I tried it, poetry, all kinds of things. And I used this up until the point where we were moving from Nebraska to Japan, and we made a stop here in Nevada. And while JT and the kids were napping, I went to the casino and I started out playing nickel slots, got bored, and upgraded to the quarter slots, and actually won a small jackpot. I think it was something like $1,500. And we used that to buy our first computer, which was an Apple IIc Plus. And I've given that to our youngest daughter because she loved that thing. She used to sit on my lap while I transitioned from writing on this to writing on that. And that was back in the day where you still needed to save things to floppy disks. So I would have the little holder on my desk with all the floppy disks of my different projects. And I think I still have some of those that I don't know. I don't think the computer currently works because it is missing some cords. But our youngest has said that she may try to replace those cords, and get that computer up and running again. And if that happens, I may go back and revisit some of my early writing, which can be a painful process. Everything I wrote on here was physical on paper, and I know I have at least a folder of one of my early attempts at a romance novel that, who knows, maybe I'll rewrite it at some point because it needs a lot of help. Not to say I'm incredibly improved as a writer, because I have taken gaps in between the 1980s and now, but I do think my writing has improved. I think I've definitely matured as a person. So my writing maybe is not quite as simplistic as it was back in those days. But I have a project in mind for this old workhorse that I'm going to hopefully be able to get this up and running, type a few things over the next coming months, and I'll talk more about the project when I get closer to releasing it, because we'll see how it goes. But having this out again is definitely a trip down memory lane. I know I recently took you on another trip down memory lane as I talked about my inspiration for the Restless Spirits series that I'm working on that I need to get back to. But this predates even that trip down memory lane. So this goes way back to when I was in my early 20s, and life was so much more exciting because everything was still very new, and I was learning about my new husband and about being a mother and about being a military spouse and about my new environment, because we lived over 1,000 miles away from where we'd gotten married, and then we moved overseas. So this really it's seen a lot of mileage, both in use and in traveling around the world, because it's been to Japan and back. And my youngest also used this a bit. I'm actually surprised I found it in the closet here because I thought she had it, but I think she may have left it behind because she's, like I said, there are a couple of keys missing here and needs a new cartridge and all those fun things. So thought you might enjoy seeing a little bit of low tech when it comes to the writing front, and discussing typewriters with our podcast guest really inspired me to pull this out and check on it. So I had already been thinking about using it, but needs a little love. So we'll see how that goes. I'll keep you posted on the progress. I don't know. I might have to scout out other avenues of finding the cartridges that I need for this, and I don't know if it's possible to actually get replacement keys, but this is an old Smith Corona DeVille cartridge 1, and like I said, it's from the early 1980s, 82, 83, somewhere in that time period. It may predate that, but it's pretty solidly constructed. Like I said, it is electric. The motor still runs, so it's a little rough, and so I think it is usable as long as I find what I need. So thank you for hanging out with me as I went down memory lane again and talked a little bit about how I got started writing, the equipment that I used at that time, and like I said, hopefully moving forward you may see a little bit more of this as I use our, I don't know, maybe I'll call this room the garret because it almost feels like a little apartment in its own right. There is an attached bathroom and complete with a shower. If we had maybe a microwave and a mini fridge up here, this could stand as its own little apartment. So it's I got my other office just across the hallway at the top of the stairs, the one with all my plants and the beautiful sunny south-facing windows, but the back area has storage space and another bed, so there's a possibility to have maybe 3 people sleep up here. If I wanted to put an air mattress on the floor in the other room, I could have up to 4. We have such a versatile house. And now I'm just rambling. So thank you again for spending time with me today. If you are interested in how this process goes with my typewriter, definitely stay tuned because I will be bringing it back again, and I'll talk more about the project that I have in mind as I move forward. If it doesn't work on here, I'll definitely go back to my computer, or I could handwrite this project, which could also be interesting. So many options. I hope you're having a wonderful day and a wonderful week, and I thank you for joining me. I'm Cassidy Carson, and this is The Life of a Writer.